I'm very careful about the off-planet stuff. It's not verifiable. And for me, with remote, I want to make sure a remote viewing actually took place. But I have had some very interesting ones. I remote viewed Phobos, the Mars moon. Phobos was given to me as a target. I had this structure, and there were living organisms growing inside of it. I could call it as a generic term, like an incubator. There was something living in there and growing inside of there. I thought that was a fascinating target.
Life is but a dream. Life is but a dream. Life is but a dream. Yeah. Hello, you beautiful souls. Welcome to the Praise the Sun podcast, where I'm honored to have on my guest, Edward Riordan. Edward, how are you, my friend? We finally made it.
Yeah, we finally made it. Great to be here. Great to meet you. And I really look forward to our chat.
Yes, me too. Yeah. We finally got it in, and I've been looking forward to this. I always have such a great time learning and talking to remote viewers. My audience really loved the interview with Dick, and I was like, we got to get some more remote viewers on because people really want to learn from you guys. So I'm excited.
Yeah, well, great. We always appreciate the support or the interest in it, and so yeah, we're happy to speak with you about it.
Awesome. So, for my audience who is not quite familiar with you and your work, could you give us a brief background and as to how you got to where you are now? How'd you become a remote viewer?
I've been remote viewing for 25 years now with controlled remote viewing or a specific protocol based remote viewing. I've been using it for 25 years. Prior to that was more the uh, intuitive stuff, tarot cards, meditations, more your kind of baseline intuitive pursuits, which led me to remote viewing, which had had certain things that I was really looking for in the kind of pursuit of intuitive things and learning things, learning about what is possible, human potential, what my potentials could be. Um, and that was kind of the driving force. So yeah, it's been about 25 years that I've been uh, practicing remote viewing. I started a YouTube site in 2011 where I started to videotape myself doing remote viewing sessions, and that kind of helped me to kind of get my face out there, which I kind of wasn't really trying to do. I guess I just wanted to show people what remote viewing looked like under live, beginning to end, no edits. This is exactly what happened, start to finish. And but that opened some doors for me, and for the past 6 years now, I've been working with the Future Forecasting Group, formerly known as CryptoViewing, and we have been a very successful group um, utilizing remote viewing to look at certain things regarding future events, future potential events, some things financial, some things that are considered woo woo or kind of mystery kind of stuff. We kind of do pretty much a little bit of everything over there, and so yeah, that's the my main group right there is with future forecasting, and I still do all my stuff on the side. I still put videos up on my own, which are more based on the exploration of the process of remote viewing, um, taking it a little more away from the data gathering elements of what remote viewing is kind of perceived as, and focusing more on what is taking place inside of the person while an actual remote viewing is taking place. And that's been a big part of my personal work for many years.
Interesting. What's happening inside of someone when the remote viewing's taking place? What have you found that's taking place inside of people when they're remote viewing?
Well, there's a big answer for that one. I kind of have to start in the at the beginning of this pursuit to give some um, background or some reference to what I'm trying to explain. But um, remote viewing, it can be a very difficult thing for some people to kind of wrap their heads around, and how to do a remote viewing session, and what typically happens, what might be happening, what should be happening, what protocols are designed. Why is there a protocol or a set of instructions to follow, and can be very frustrating. So I got to a certain point where I wanted to kind of address some of my frustrations with systems of remote viewing. So I kind of backed myself out of the protocol end of it, and I began to just focus primarily on what is supposed to be happening here. And some of the areas that I was drawn to explore more were the theoretical threshold of awareness, or otherwise could be known as the subliminal barrier, or that area between consciousness and the subconscious, where the two of them meet. And that was kind of the starter of this long pursuit of what might be taking place inside of a person attempting to remote view. And so I focused on that specifically. What is the threshold of awareness? What is this limin? What is this subliminal barrier? What is it? How can I find it? Is it something that I can perceive? All of these kinds of questions. Um, and what I found is that the only way to even attempt to answer some of these questions was to use remote viewing itself to try to answer some of these questions that I had, because I just couldn't find the answers anywhere. There's answers out there, but none of them seemed honest enough for me to say, yeah, okay, I think they're onto something there. They just seemed kind of, they didn't really seem to satisfy my curiosity about some of these things. So what I decided to do then was to use blind quote unquote targets, which is what we there's two things that we do in remote viewing. Is one, we work under blind conditions, meaning we don't know what the target is. We don't know what the locate. We don't know if it's a person, a place, or a thing. We go into it blind. All we get is a random set of numbers or letters that represent the target's identification, meaning that there is something there, and we're going to try to perceive it. So I needed to use my blind protocol for that, and just regular, what may be considered training targets, which they're anything. They're really anything. It could be a building, it could be a group of people, it could be the middle of the ocean, it could be a NASCAR race, it could be the moon, it could be clouds in the sky, literally anything. And I needed that because, one, I'm trying to find the threshold of my awareness using remote viewing, and I want remote viewing to reveal it to me, the process of remote viewing to reveal it to me, meaning uh, I'm going to go into the target blind, and I'm waiting to for a perception to begin to peek into my awareness that I become aware of, and then I'm going to follow that. I'm going to focus specifically on that. I don't care what the target is. I don't care if I'm going to do great on the target or anything like that. So I had to remove myself from the burden of being right and focus specifically on what is taking place. Meaning that if below the threshold of our awareness in our subconscious mind, if we are processing that information about that remote location and then sending that up above the threshold of our awareness, and then we become aware of it. Oh, okay, I get a sense there's something going on over here, and there's movement happening, and there's people here, they're moving around, that kind of thing. But before all that stuff happens, the people in the building and all that, something is going on below the threshold of awareness, down into the subconscious. The information is being processed down there, and that's what I wanted. I wanted to find that. I wanted to find that liminal barrier, that subliminal barrier, and so I did 50 or 100 experiments on it. All experimental, total experiment. I was in full on experimental mode to work target after target to begin to recognize, oh yeah, okay, there it is. There's something. And then it would kind of dip back down below. And oh, I lost it. I lost it. Oh, here it comes again. Oh, okay, well, grab something, grab something. Oh, now it's gone again. Oh, okay. That's the threshold of my awareness. I can perceive it now. And so that's the kind of stuff that I'm talking about. My theory is that the subliminal barrier is an electromagnetic field in our brain, and um, and our awareness can kind of go to it, but it's very difficult to go through it. Kind of like two magnets that kind of they won't go together. That type of an analogy. But what I did find is that as far as perceptual the perceptual end of it is that when I found that threshold element, and then when a perception did make its way above it and then dip back down, I found that there were natural things that we have as human beings that would allow me to kind of follow that through. And that natural, wonderful thing is this amazing ability that humans have, all of us humans have, which is curiosity. And so I theorize that curiosity can breach the threshold, meaning that if I perceive something coming above the threshold of my awareness and I become curious about it, then something else opens up. And then the curiosity itself now begins to pull me. Now I'm getting pulled through a remote viewing session, and something different is taking place now. Something really quite wonderful is taking place, and so that kind of started it, and then it grew from there. The process itself began to provide me with more and more to pursue. You know, so it wasn't like I was sitting there going, what am I going to do?" I was doing experimentation, and then the experimentation will bring out the next thing, and then I would pursue that, and then pursue that. So the process itself became my teacher, and I became its student, basically. And in that, I wanted to go beyond the okay. Well, I perceive the threshold of my awareness to a degree that I feel pretty good about. Now, what else is going on? And I theorized that whatever was happening is happening in the brain, and I wanted to try to find where those things were taking place. And I theorized um, that there might be in our brain stem and midbrain, in the oldest parts of our brain. I theorized, again, using remote viewing, blind targets to do this. Basically, what I did was I did a series of experiments to try to locate the areas in my brain that I felt were being stimulated by the quote unquote target. And I theorize that it's not really a target, it's really a range of time and space. So I began to look at it more, I began to look at the entire process very, very differently from how I was taught the process, because the way I was taught really didn't answer any questions. It was just do this and hopefully you're going to get good results. And if you get good results, keep doing it and keep giving me good results. Don't worry about anything else. That's kind of the philosophy, unfortunately. And that didn't really work for me. So, but as far as finding the elements in my brain, I wanted to attempt to perceive where the stimulation was taking place in my brain. Is it frontal lobe? Where is it taking place? I wanted to know. And through the process of remote viewing blind targets under blind conditions, I felt the stimulation was taking place in the brainstem and in the areas of the midbrain in the beginning stages. I'm not talking the end stages where maybe we're up here and we're going into deep philosophical things or heavy concepts and stuff like that. I'm talking about the initial interaction with that range of time and space. And the areas that I began to find that were being stimulated, I would perceive that from a remote viewing session. It's back here somewhere, you know. Then I would go and I would look up those areas of the brain. I'm not a neuroscientist. I'm not a brain biologist. I'm none of those things. It's right here. What's going on there? And I would go and I would look at those areas of the brain, and I almost fell off my chair multiple times because the processing being done in those areas of the brain were legitimizing what I had was perceiving. That down in this area here, in let's say an area called the cerebral peduncle area, which are these little bands that go around the brainstem. And I say that's them. What do these things do? And one of the things that they do is they process in proprioceptive information. I was like, proprioceptive? I don't know what that means. So I looked that up, and proprioceptive information is information that comes through the proprioceptive nerves in the body to that part of the brain that provide the body with spatial awareness and a sense of dimensionality where they exist in space. And they said in the description there, also considered the sixth sense, the part of the brain responsible for the sixth sense. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe it. Anyway, that's just kind of an example of some of the stuff that I was doing. There's a lot more to it. I don't want to take up all of the time with that kind of technical stuff, but that's kind of a short overview, kind of the personal work that I'm doing.
That that was fascinating. So so a few things. What would you consider the sixth sense to be? Sixth sense.
In my opinion about it, it would be our ability to perceive things that are outside of our range of sense awareness. And in my opinion, as I was contemplating things like, okay, I think we're starting down here. It kind of in I took on the opinion that our intuitive sense is a base survival mechanism. And that's why it may begin back here in the oldest parts of our brain as our ability to perceive things, dangers, stuff like that, environmental factors that could be life threatening. And so, in my opinion, a base part of it is a survival mechanism. And then beyond that, the utilization of it is where we can kind of go into the wonder of life itself, our perception and our experience and connectivity with other things too, and our kind of non physical um, who we are beyond our physical bodies and stuff like that as well.
Does the visualization come from that oldest part of our brain as well, or is that a different part of our brain? If you know.
Uh, it's not from that part of the brain. So that part of the brain is going to begin to provide dimensional awarenesses. I call them dimensional sensations, and that's what I call them for remote viewing. So it's less visual and it's more a dimensional sense. It's kind of like well, like they say for proprioception, it'd be like if you're in a room that is completely dark or you have something blocking out your eyes and you cannot see, it's your proprioceptive nerves that are going to say, there's something over here. There's a solid mass over here. There's another softer one here, and it moves. This is open space. Here, this is a ceiling. Here, I could feel there's a solid above me, and now I get the sense that I'm enclosed. I could get the sense that I'm enclosed. I walk through here, and it's open again. So that kind of thing, that kind of base, what I call dimensional sensations of where we are in time and space, and our ability to perceive where we are in time and space on a dimensional level of mass and more and less mass, basically.
Interesting. So the initial stimulation from when you first react and interact with that target comes from the back half. Why was that so significant for you to figure out? Why was that your research?
I had read in one of Ingo Swan's books. Ingo Swan is the guy who developed the controlled remote viewing protocol back in the 1970s. He put out a book, a really good book, my favorite of his books, called Natural ESP. And in there, he was talking about the access point of the initial or the initial quote unquote contact with the target, basically, or some of the old terms in remote viewing, like they call it like a signal line, and your first initial interaction with that quote unquote signal line. Again, phrases that I don't utilize anymore. They're meaningless to me. But the notion of something like an access point or our initial interaction with something outside of ourselves like that could be anywhere in time and space, anywhere, future, past, wherever. And I really became obsessed with where might that be? How might that work? And so I theorized that there may be two different things to look at. One of them is if what they call a quote unquote target, which again I don't like that term, I had to look at, well, what actually is it? It's a range of time and space, whether it's November 23rd, 1963, Dallas, JFK getting shot. That's a range of time and space right there. Whether it's the World Trade Center Tower 9/11, that's another range of time and a range of space. Maybe it's uh, the Olympics that just took place in France or whatever. Again, where does it exist? It exists in a range of time and space. So I began to look at it that way. So somehow then, we've proven it to ourselves many times over that we somehow have the ability to access these ranges of time and space wherever they exist. How might we be able to do that? And what state does that range of time exist in? What state does it even exist in? I don't know. So I theorized that possibly we could have something along the lines of a selector mechanism somewhere in our anatomy in our brain that can somehow select these ranges of time and space, these X and Y type coordinates, again, just as a generic term, somehow is able to select them specifically. Because let's say JFK, November 1963, that's specific. That's a very specific moment in time and space. So if remote viewers can remote view the assassination of JFK in 1963, that means they can select that specific time and space and describe it or experience it or whatever. So I theorize we must have some mechanism, and I call it a selector mechanism, to be able to find that and then begin to decode or acquire that state that range of time and space exists in. And I also theorize there must be some kind of an attractor mechanism in our brain as well that's going to pull that state through our neural nets through the pyramidal nerves in our brain into other parts of the brain and begin to uh, decode it, kind of a generic term, reinterpret it, or move it into different areas of our brain that can then begin to put it into something that we can understand better. And so that's why I became obsessed. I became obsessed with that. I still am. It's still an obsession of mine. you know, it's just the most interesting thing that I've come across. You know.
I agree. I agree wholeheartedly, and I'm I'm hopeful that people who are like into remote viewing are like really, I guess, nerding out as much as I am because I'm absolutely fascinated by all of that. Because I think about that as well. That's something that I kept thinking about as I was talking to Dick. I was just thinking like, there has to be some type of mechanism for us to be observing these coordinates, and I also want to ask you, what is the, I guess, purpose of the coordinates? Like, is that the time space? Those numbers, those coordinates on the x and the y. That's how we're able to pinpoint exactly where that target is or thing that we're trying to observe is.
Well, that was what they theorized originally when they were working with a couple of people back in the 70s, and so they were like, "Well, how are we going to do this?" And so someone came up with the idea of, "Why don't we use map coordinates, longitude, latitude, and all that kind of stuff, and we'll give them that. Okay, here's this coordinate. You know, tell me what's going on over there. You know." And they had some pretty good success with that. So they were like, okay, but what if maybe this person has a photographic memory and they've memorized the coordinates and they're just kind of, maybe they're cheating, you know? And so somebody came up with the idea of, well, why don't we just have an area or something, and we'll just come up with some random set of numbers and see how that works. And they found that that worked just as well. So it didn't, you could basically, so then basically the target ID or the coordinates, they really didn't matter. All that was required was that here's a location. I won't tell you what it is. I know what it is. And can you describe what's going on there? And they found that they could do it just as well. You could just as well say ready, set, go, and be able to do the same thing. And so yeah, that's a really great question, and definitely something that it was proven that we could just really say ready, set, go, or just go, and do our thing and describe something outside of our awareness. That we don't know what it is, but we can do it. We can describe it. We can experience it. Not just describe it. We can experience things there too. You know, People and ideas, um, intentions. I like. I say that I have a learning disability myself. I have dyslexia, and I always had terrible time in school. They always said I had terrible reading comprehension, and my comprehension was very low. But when I'm remote viewing, it's the opposite. I go into a space where my comprehension level substantially goes up, substantially, and I can understand ideas, motivations. If it's an architecture or something like that, I may pick up the motivation of the architect, stuff like that. Really deep, rich, wonderful. Hopefully, most of the time, uh, deep concepts. And that's a little bit later. That's not brainstem stuff. That's higher level, different parts of the brain kind of thing. Um, Great levels of appreciation. And that's why I love remote viewing so much. we'll do a debrief, and I'll be like, guys, I love this session. I loved every minute of it. And I'm saying that because I went into a space where I felt very expressed in what I was doing, and I was using remote viewing to do it, and that's why I love it so much.
Hmm. So you said that people can just like ready set go and go to it. Are you saying that they don't need the coordinates to go there, or
No, you don't. No.
so what are they given then to focus on as a target? What?
For most remote viewers, it's just a random set of numbers or a random
Okay.
set of numbers and letters. They kind of came up with the target ID in the military days, which was typically a 8 digits, 8 numbers. Four digits and a dash and four more digits, and that's a common remote viewing target ID. HRVG, which is the style Dick Allgaier uses, they use letters. They use all letters. With future forecasting, we do a combination of letters and numbers. I mean, it doesn't matter to me. Numbers and letters, just give me a target ID. I don't care. But yeah, that it really doesn't mean anything other than there's a quote unquote target and there's something there. And my job is to attempt to describe it and experience it and see what's going on there. And yeah, that's all that target ID means. It doesn't mean anything else.
That's fascinating. So essentially, the person who's like giving you the target ID, they could just give you a random set of numbers, and then you just explain what you're experiencing or seeing from that random. Huh?
That's right. Yeah.
Does does the person's intention change anything? Like the person who's giving the set of random numbers, do
Great question. That is a great question, and it can. It really can. Um, Depending on the type of target that I'll put it this way, depending on the question that they have, because remote viewing is typically you're asking a question, you're looking for some answers about something. You know, I don't know what's going on over there, and we'll use remote viewers to see if what they can get about what's going on over there. It's a question, basically, and even if the feedback is just a photo of something, the question is still what's going on over there. What is that thing? What can you tell me about what's happening over there? So it's really a question, and um, the tasker or the person setting up the task, if they had, we have seen this happen before, that if the person who is setting up that task has a very strong preconceived notion about what they think or what they believe is associated with that target, it can come through in it can influence the viewers. We have seen it. You know, that doesn't mean it's going to happen every time, but it definitely can happen. And it's a serious issue, and um, that's why when you talk to people who are more experienced remote viewers, they'll tell you, I only work with people that I trust. You because if someone, I mean, honestly, I get emails, remote view this for me, do this for me, remote view. No, 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 no. I don't know who you are. No, I'm not going to do it. I don't know where you think you're going to send me or whatever. I just don't trust that, because it only takes you getting burned a couple times before you learn, oh, okay, I got to be real careful about who I work with, you know. And so, like at future forecasting, yeah, we've been doing this for 6 years. We were working as a team for 6 years, and we do a lot of remote viewing. But there has been a learning curve, that because of the volume of work that we do, we've had to go through adjustments. I mean, if people, if remote viewers, they're doing a project once every couple of months or whatever, and it's like, okay, it can be maybe a little more loose. We do projects every single week for 6 years, every single week, sometimes more than one per week. So, so the tasking has become an issue, and we've had to adjust and say, okay, this, adjust it down the line because we want uh, to to have the best experiences that we can have as remote viewers. We want to produce the best remote viewing results that we are capable of, you know, and we know that the tasking is a part of that. It is a part of that, and so it's a really big it is a big deal. Yeah, it's when you get to doing a lot of work, it becomes of a high priority that the tasker has. We have to have a tasker that really knows what they're doing, because it can screw up the whole project.
Interesting. Let's talk about the mechanics of remote viewing. Like, how is it even possible that we can observe something outside of us through that? Is it our awareness is just kind of tuning into a certain frequency and it's observing that? Is it, are we like traveling somewhere? What are the mechanics behind what's happening?
Well, that's another great question. It's a very big question, and there's a lot of different answers. You'll probably get a different answer for that for as many people that you would ask what the answer is. But
Yeah.
I'll give you my opinion on it. And this is again, these are just my opinions. I'm not saying I don't deal in absolutes in any way, so I'm not saying this is absolutely how it is. All I can say is this is my opinion based on my personal work, and I'm always open to changing my point of view. But in my pursuit of the process of how this might be working, um, and began to go through this idea of that we may have a selector mechanism in somewhere in the deep parts, oldest parts of our brain, and how that might work. And if it is selecting a range of time and space, and then in whatever state that exists in, and then kind of decoding that or translating that state, that maybe um, those states exist in possibly maybe in a form of radiation. And so I theorize that maybe November 23rd, 1963, JFK, Dallas exists in a gravitational wave or a state of gravitational radiation, maybe. And if that's possible, then maybe that selector mechanism can select that range of time and space, and we don't actually go anywhere. And we can just select that and then begin the decoding, the translation process of what's taking place in that state, in that range of time and space. Um, that's my theory on it. There, there's, I mean, and like I say, there's a lot of different ones. We go out and we fly around over here. We go out and do all those things. Uh, I that is my going theory on that, and I feel I just when I come up with or explore a theory like that, I just like to sit with it and let it kind of permeate, you know, and not make any strong opinion decisions about it. Like, "Yeah, this is exactly how it is, or that's exactly not how it is." Just kind of sit in this notion, this theory, and I've been sitting in that theory of that maybe that state exists in a gravitational wave, and we have the ability to select those cross sections somehow. And maybe that might be how it works. Maybe that's one that I like so far.
Hmm, yes, I like that too. So, for our audience who is very interested in remote viewing, is remote viewing something that anyone can learn, or what are the processes that someone would have to go through to begin to learn how to remote view it?
Remote viewing is learnable. It is teachable. But I look at it in terms of anything else. You It's like basketball or playing the guitar or um, maybe writing a computer program or whatever. Some people are going to have a greater natural ability to do it. I can dribble a basketball, but I can't get out there and play with NBA people. I mean, I'd be like a 2 month old baby out there, or like a guitar. Here, you know, I can strum a few chords, but I'm not. I can't get up there and start playing like a Stevie Ray Vaughan or something like that. There's just people who are going to be naturally more inclined for whatever reason, because of maybe different brain style or something like that. May be more inclined to do very well with it. And then there's people who will do good with it, people who do okay with it, and maybe there's some people who really, really have a difficulty uh, trying to wrap their head around it, what's supposed to be happening, and stuff like that. So everyone's going to kind of fit into that range somewhere, you know. Um, it's very, I will say, it's very difficult. Uh, Time, energy requiring endeavor to become really good at it. Takes a lot of time and a lot of um dedication, a lot of dedication. It's just, it's not an easy thing to do because you have, in my opinion, here again, I'm just giving you my perspective, not the overall. Um, but we're dealing with changing how the mind works, how we are perceiving something. And so you may have somebody who they've been thinking the same way for all their life, 30, 40, 50 years. And then, wow, remote viewing, I want to try that. And you sit down and then you realize this is very different than the way that I've been using my brain for the past 40 years. I'm going to have to learn and unlearn and relearn a whole bunch of stuff about how my mind works. And for some people, that's very exciting. Like me, I was like, that's great. For some people, it can be it can be a little painful for some people, um, because when you practice remote viewing, you're practicing against, again, blind targets. You don't know what the target is. And you want to draw something or that's going to match that feedback, right? And when that happens, you're super excited. Oh my God, I can do this. When it doesn't happen, it's like, oh, that hurt. I thought I was onto something there. And so begins the learning curve, and um, the learning process. My theory is uh, remote viewing for me is a lifelong endeavor. You know, 25 years I've been doing it. I'll be doing it till the end. I'm a lifer. But I also like to say that first you learn how to remote view, and then you spend the rest of your life learning how you remote view. So it just depends on what someone's purpose for the pursuit is. Do they want to learn about themselves? Do they want to prove that they can do it? Do they want to find that parts of themselves that can describe things that are anywhere in time and space? What is the reason for the pursuit? In my opinion, that needs to be very, very clearly defined so that it can balance the wins and losses of remote viewing, because the losses can be pretty brutal. Uh, and the winds are obviously magical, you know. But you got to go past the losses. But there's a lot of training. We do training at Future Forecasting Group. In CRV style, in HRVG style. Like I say, Dick Allgaier, he uses HRVG style. Naeem, who's one of our teammates, remote viewing teammates, he's teaching a class there for the HRVG. Dan Smith is doing the more CRV-esque style. So people who want to take some classes, you're in good hands with those guys. Real good hands with those guys.
Awesome. Are there any specific techniques or things that people could like practice on their home at home to maybe like prep themselves to if they're like become interested in wanting to take a class but they want to see what they can do on their own or anything like that?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's probably I'm sure there's probably some short kind of style videos available on YouTube. Kind of hard how to get started, but anybody can do it if you have someone at home who is willing to work with you. You can say, "Can you help me with this? I'll sit in this room, and you grab a random object and put it on the table, and when it's there, let me know, and I'm going to try and sketch it." You know, that's a super easy way to do it. Um, if they're a little more ambitious, they can try an outbounder and say have their friend or their spouse or whatever, and you say, okay, I want you to go drive somewhere random, not something totally random, and I want you to be there in 20 minutes. Exactly in 20 minutes, I'm going to try to describe what you're looking at, and then I'll call you when I'm done, and we'll see how we did. Those are super easy, very cool uh, experiments to try. If someone wants to try working against the blind targets, there's plenty of websites out there that they could go to that have practice targets, and so there'll be a web page with just a whole line of random number IDs, and you just pick the first one and write that number down and just try to draw it out. What's there, what does it feel like? Maybe jot down some ideas of what you think it might be, how you feel about it. Do I like it, do I not like it, that kind of thing. Try to get a sense of what's going on there, and then when you're done, click on that link and get your feedback and see how you did. Those are real super basic, easy things that anybody can do, just to give it a try, see how they do. Just stay open to it, stay curious about it, um, and learn from every session you do, be it good or bad. That's the main thing. Even if it's not a good one, there's always something to learn from it, and there's always another target to do. And so, yeah, anybody can try it. There's plenty of ways things that they can do, super easy things that they can do. Just get a target or whatever. Just give yourself 2 minutes. I give myself 2 minutes here. Well, I'll go until I'm done. Whatever. Give myself 1, 2, 3 minutes. Draw something out or whatever, and then check your feedback. It's that easy, really. It's not complicated. Um, yeah, that's the easy way to do it.
Nice. What has been one of the most interesting things you've remote viewed? Have you ever seen anything off planet or something that's maybe like hidden?
Oh boy, I have had some of the off-planet stuff. I'm very careful about the off-planet stuff, um, for a lot of different reasons. It's not verifiable, and for me with remote, I want to make sure a remote viewing actually took place,
Right.
and that's very important. That's very important. So some of the off-world stuff, can't really verify that, but I have had some very interesting ones. I remote viewed Phobos, the Mars moon. Phobos was given to me as a target, and I had this structure, and there were living organisms growing inside of it, I could call it as a generic term like an incubator. There was something living in there and growing inside of there. I thought that was a fascinating target. Um, we've worked a bunch of fascinating targets with future forecasting. Gene Roddenberry, the guy who wrote the Star Trek series, we were given him as a target, and specifically tasked as the motivation for the series of Star Trek, which was a great tasking. Great, great tasking, because that's exactly what I went into was the motivation or the source of creativity. It really went down to the source of creativity. And a lot of things that went back into these ancient cultures, back into Egyptian cultures, and back into these uh, ancient ideas of where inspiration comes from that's personified in a deity. You know, inspiration comes from this deity, and that kind of thing. And that was a fascinating journey. Um, One of my favorites was Mary Magdalene. I was given the target was there's a very old church in France that is like in the downstairs of a bigger church or something like that. But the oldest part, you have to go down. Well, I guess it's the bottom part. You go down there, and there is behind all this glass and everything is a skull, and it's supposed to be the skull of Mary Magdalene, and it's been there for hundreds and hundreds of years. So I was given that as a tasking, and the why that is one of my all-time favorites is before I even started working the target, before I was even given the target ID, I started to experience the target, and I just was, for lack of a better term, seeing this person walking down this very kind of lightly sloped, rocky slope, and they had this, natural kind of garb and what looked like leathery, like a sandal kind of thing. And I just every time I closed my eyes, I would see that person walking down just from like the waist down, you know. And I mean, I would just like anywhere I went, and I'm like, oh man, there's something going on. This must be related to a target. A couple of days later, I get the target, and that's the first thing I draw out. And I go through this whole experience of that era of Jesus, Mary, the roles that the women played, specifically the roles that the women played in their setting that they had, and uh, and ways of perceiving that I had never conceived of or perceived of before. Their role, the importance of their role. They're not just the ladies walking around making food or whatever. No, they're very, very specific, very important roles in their in their settings, which was just fascinating to me. And so after I got the feedback, I was like, you know, I honestly felt like what had happened was uh, the spirit worked through my friend Dustin Newcomb, who set the tasking up, to see if I would tell a story for that spirit, and I agreed to do it, and I did it, and I just felt like something was like thank you, like thank you for telling my story, and I was like this is the most profound remote viewing experience I've ever had.
Wow, that's wow. That sounds incredible.
It was pretty. It was, yeah. I'll never let that one go. That one sticks with me for all time on that one.
So it feels like the Mary Magdalene spirit energy kind of influenced Dustin to get you to remote view that time and space
That's my theory on it.
theory, right?
And it seems that way to me.
Wow. So did you? So were you also experiencing emotions during this viewing?
That's a great question. Not that I can really recall. It's an interesting thing that happens in remote viewing. Is in a deep session, the emotional element, the it's, the parts of the brain that are working don't seem to be attached to the emotional side that produce and flood the brain with emotional, you know, neurotransmitters and stuff like that.
Right.
And so, in a session, you're like an unemotional observer. You know, what I will say is that it's after the session. It's during the feedback is when all the emotions come out. At least for me, I can't say that for everybody. You know,
Okay.
I mean, there have been times with future forecasting where we will be debriefing a target we worked, and I'd be going through all my work, and I will read what I wrote, and I will literally stop and start crying because the emotions now hit me, you know, because of some real deep thing that I just described. But in the moment, I'm like in a part of myself that is beyond uh, emotional reaction. You know, it's kind of hard to explain. I'm not saying like a robotic, non-emotional thing. I'm saying just like a very uh, large part of who we are that can understand things from a very high altitude. You know,
Right.
and then but when I'm going through the session after the feedback, I'm back down on ground level, and it's very emotional down here. You know,
Mm.
so but with that in mind, there have been a few times in the session where I'm like something's coming through, and I'm like, I get a little ticked off. You know, like, I'm not for this. You know, I don't like this idea.
Right.
That's I'm describing, suppression of humans, and I don't like that. I don't. I want to rebel against that right now and say no, no, you know. So if a target, if I'm working a target that I later find out is somehow related to something that could be kind of suppressive or oppressive to humanity, and that comes through in the session, man, I will get, you know,
Right.
pull out the sword and ready to go to battle.
Warrior mode. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that I will
Wow.
say that has happened a couple times. That has happened.
Interesting. Um, so the question about Phobos, when you said that something there was like kind of like an incubator, something was growing, are you meaning like maybe like a fungus, or did you mean like beings were growing?
Yeah. When I look at that session was like over 10 years ago. So when I look
Okay.
at it now, um, honestly, man, I don't know because in the session it was like there are some entities in here. I don't know if they're human or whatever, but they seem to be cultivating something in there. And um, whether or not I don't know if I'm right about that. So I'd say if we were to kind of bring it down to a base level, I'd say there may be some fungus or some living organism inside of there in a tunnel. Maybe it's hollow inside. So if it's not like there's someone in there or some group in there who are cultivating something for whatever reason or whatever it is, but it may just be some kind of growth of some other kind. You know, maybe I might have went off into too far sci-fi and calling it something.
You're right.
You know, but that, well, you know what the target was? Uh, the target was the an event that happened with Phobos in 1989. There was a probe. It was called Phobos that was being sent to that moon, and when it was getting right near it, the last photograph that was taken, there was looked like something had been was hitting it. You know, there was like a streak heading for the probe, and then boom, it was that was a final thing. So basically, I think the tasking was what happened to this probe? Did someone take it out? You know, that was kind of
Mm,
what the idea behind it was. You know,
uh,
what happened to this probe? Is there somebody on Phobos or Mars who was like, don't drop a probe on that moon? You know, because when you look at that moon, it's really strange. It is a very strange looking body.
right.
It literally looks like there was like it was wrapped with something and dragged along. I mean, it is a very unusual looking object,
Right.
and which I didn't know too much about it. Then when I got the feedback, I was like, I don't know, I don't remember this. When I started looking at the photographs and looking at some videos, I was like, that is a very unusual looking moon. I don't know what that thing is. You know,
Right.
if it's natural, then someone's going to have to explain how those, it looks like somebody wrapped it with chains and dragged it, you know.
Right.
How did that happen?
Yeah. Huh. Wow. Fascinating.
That was kind of a cool one.
Yeah, yeah, it sounds cool. Wow. So during, and I know you have you've been careful with the interplanetary ones, but you've never observed a different like civilization or anything,
I
or
have, yeah, yeah,
ah,
I have. Um, I I'm just I'm very careful about influencing people, and you
right,
know when we're out, like you know we have videos out and people watch our stuff, and because of that, we have a responsibility for what we present. You
right,
know, we have to be responsible for what we present, and I take that very serious. And so, if it's something that is non-verifiable, I'm not going to try to convince anybody that my remote viewing proves it to be true.
mm-hmm,
I don't. I stay very clear of that and say, this is my session. That was the target, um, and you make up your own mind. I'm not telling you what is or what is not true. That being said, we had a tasking just recently, maybe a couple months ago, and a an area photographed on Mars that had what looked like some kind of a strange formation inside of a crater, um, and that was the tasking, kind of what's going on there, you know. And so, of course, we're blind to the target. We have no idea what the target is, but I'm drawing out and getting a sense of this landscape, you know, that looks like that, and there's kind of like a grid pattern inside of this thing, like inside of a crater. And but there was also what seemed to be like a stairway going under, going down into like a basement or something like that, or an underground area. And I explored that, and I was began to kind of give myself movement. We're called movements in a session, you know, where you basically it's a question, you know, what does that mean? Go to this thing and explore that more, or move over here and you know what's going on over there, that kind of thing. And so I want to know why why are they, what's the underground thing all about? And I began to experience kind of a meteor coming down, and that's why they were under there. And so I asked the question, what if this is Mars? You know, what if this isn't Earth? What if this is Mars? And I didn't say this is Mars. I said, what if this is Mars? You know, and when it kept going through the session and continued describing and describing, and the Mars thing came up again, like I think I'm on Mars here, you know. And um, when I got the feedback, it was like, oh crap, it was Mars, Now, now what? Was I indulging my own fantasies, or was I describing something that actually is true of an ancient civilization on Mars? I am of the opinion. Uh, I'm in favor. Let's say I'm in favor of the idea that of an ancient civilization on Mars, and that session did reinforce that for me personally. You um, but but what do I do with that? I just internalize it for myself, and I'm not going to go out there like, "Come on, everybody, we got to believe ancient civilization on Mars." I'm just like, that's just for me. I'll sit with that and contemplate it, and um, maybe even how I maybe be related to that in some way. You know.
Fascinating, fascinating. Yeah, that takes me back to over a decade ago when I watched this video of this supposed boy from Russia who had these past life memories of being on Mars, and saying that, yeah, I guess like something came and hit the planet. And then,
Really?
yeah, and then the most interesting thing wasn't even that. The most interesting thing is that he said that they placed his soul in some type of container or something like that. Like they placed his soul in this rock or something. And I was like, how did they do that? And then at some point, they all kind of got out and came to Earth. And I was like, okay, well, but it was just fascinating because this kid had to been 10 or something, and he was just talking in such vivid details about being on Mars and the life that he lived. And yeah, it was a long time ago that I seen that video.
Wow, man.
Yeah,
You know what? I just really feel there's something to it.
yeah, yeah,
It would just make sense. If it could be proven, it would really make a lot of things make more sense. you know.
yeah, yeah. I don't know if it was Mars, but I swear I just seen something about some like water being found on one of these planets in our solar system. I can't remember. I was like, how is this not like national news? This is like pretty. That's a pretty massive thing because that's a prerequisite for life is
That's
water.
right. That's right.
So I
That's
don't
right.
know if it was Mars or what. I was just so surprised that it wasn't like such a big thing because that's just one of the main things we've been looking for is water.
Wouldn't it be a great world that we live in if that was the main focus for us?
Yeah,
You know.
yeah.
And
Oh
wow,
man.
we would. It'd be pretty great.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I guess at some point there's just gonna have to be like a mass event of just a giant craft in the sky, and before everyone's like, okay, so they do exist, like
Hey, something, man.
something. Yeah. Well, anyways, we reached the top of the hour, so this is my question that I like to ask all of my guests. What is your definition of love?
Oh, love. My definition of love. I'd say my definition of love is the internal force and drive uh, that makes us want to create, be creative, and express our true creative potential. You know, and that's that. It's kind of, I guess that's how I would define it. You know, the driving force of the greatest part of ourselves that is part of this unbounded creative energy. You know, and
Lovely. And what does the sun represent to you? One
oh,
in the
the
sky.
sun! Oh, the
Yeah.
sun!
Yeah.
Oh man, that's life and uh, enlightenment, uh, uh, nurturing, um, destruction. Um the sun is to me is kind of like the big lion, you know. I mean, which is I'm sure why the lion is portrayed as a for the sun as a solar deity, you know, with the big lion's mane and all that, because it's the king of the jungle, and it'll protect its cubs. Uh, it'll love them, and teach them. But if it's got to kick some butt, it ain't gonna have any problem doing that either. You know, yeah, it's a big daddy in my opinion.
Lovely. I love that.
Yeah,
Big Daddy.
big daddy.
I love that.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's like you know,
Yeah,
don't make it mad.
exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. Wow. This has been absolutely amazing, Edward. Where can people reach out to you and connect with you if they would like to learn more?
well, they could find me over at Future Forecasting, futureforecastinggroup.com. Uh, we're all over there. I have my YouTube page, which is just my name, Edward Riordan, and I think I'm closing on 500 videos. Um, most of them are all remote viewing examples. A few of them are, you know, maybe some interviews or something like that. But the majority of them are all remote viewing examples. And it's funny because when I started, I was like, I'm gonna make 500 videos and then I'm gonna retire, you know. And now I'm like closing in on 500. It's like, oh no. I barely scratched the surface, man.
Just getting started.
Yeah, maybe 2,000 videos down the line, maybe they can. I'll maybe by then I'll be too old to do any of this stuff. You
I
know.
love it. I love it. Thank you so much for your time, Edward. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've learned so much, and I hope the audience have learned a great deal amount too. And I look forward to talking to more remote viewers. It's just always a fantastic topic.
Thank you. Total honor to be on your show and speak with you, and just wonderful, very comfortable atmosphere you've created, and definitely thank you and appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you. See you all next time, everyone. Praise the sun.